I don't think I've ever been as aware of how much my own actions and my own individual health affect the rest of the planet as I have been when I started really looking at my beliefs that were hindering my sleep.
Welcome to Drawing Health, a podcast resource all about comics and well-being. Here you'll find interviews with artists, writers, and healthcare workers talking about the genre of comics called graphic medicine. You'll also find guided audio practices to help you build a gentle relationship with your body, overall health, and creativity. I'm Georgia Weber, comics artist and teacher, chronically ill and neurodivergent. It's my absolute pleasure to bring you this podcast in collaboration with the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW, a grassroots nonprofit comic school and creative community where I also teach the weekly class that gave our podcast its name. So listen and subscribe to explore the worlds of graphic medicine, creative health, and yourself with some excellent company. Hi again. Georgia here, happy to be coming to you from a very sunny day in Newfoundland in winter, which is a rare occasion. So I'm quite giddy today, actually. But it could also be that this episode is with Maureen Burdock, someone whose name I've heard 1,000 times and had never met until the podcast brought us together. And it was just such a delight. So as I've been editing and looking back on the conversation, I'm just reminded that Maureen and I have a lot more to talk about. But if you don't know Maureen, I'm really pleased that this could be your introduction, and hopefully you will then go seek out her comics and enjoy all of her teaching. Her graphic medicine deep dive, in fact, starts in just a couple days, and I believe you can sign up even a little after the course starts. So if you're curious about graphic medicine, you're going to want to get on that. But first, here's our conversation. All right. Hi. I'm so pleased to be here today with Maureen Burdock, a name that I've been hearing for so long, over many years now, mostly through the shared connection of working at the Sequential Artists Workshop, where Maureen teaches a yearly graphic medicine deep dive and is just finishing up, I believe, a comics activism class, but also through 2 books. I mean, the most recent one is absolutely new to the world and new to me. But your first graphic novel, Snail Queen, the way that Tom specifically sings its praises is very inspiring. So thank you for being here today, Maureen. I'm really excited to dive in, particularly to sleep with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, Georgia. And it's so good also to meet you and be in conversation with you, because I've also heard your name for years and, through graphic medicine and graphic medicine conferences and SAW. So I'm really happy to actually connect. This is such a treat. Yeah.
I mean, I keep saying it, but it's the main reason for having this podcast is that I get to actually reach out to people whose names I've heard and work I've read, and even people who I only know about through others, being excited about them. But now we're directly connecting and there's more to it. You know, we get to go deep on the thing that we both really love, because that's what we're here for. Right. So yeah, graphic medicine. You are, with this new book, Sleepless Planet, tackling not just my favorite topic in health of sleep, but also through an approach that is a favorite of mine as well, to look at the ecology of our world, which is the environment of our sleep, which is the environment of our bodies. It's something that I don't think you use this specific word in the book, but I started learning about it through another book called Inflamed that I believe I actually recommended to you the other day, by Rupa Maria and Raj Patel. This term that's been coined in the last few years of the exposome, which refers to the things that are integral to our inner health that are part of the external world. So it's the exposome is your social environment, your home environment, your ecological environment, the positions and structures and oppressions of power all around you, and how those influence not only you, but your community and through the generations. And all of those things are relating to the experience of your health that you're having right now. So you've really tackled that in this book, talking about sleep. What made you decide to go beyond the individual and give so much context, especially illuminating elements of the natural world, elements of histories of medicine, and elements of the industrial conspiracies, the capitalist conspiracies to make money and fuck everybody else. What made you want
Yeah.
to go deeply into those things for the purposes of helping people understand their own sleep?
Well, I think because, like you mentioned, everything's connected so incredibly deeply. So the external, so-called external environment, as you mentioned, our immediate home environment, our family, community, political environment, ecological environment, those are all things that are shaping us as we understand ourselves as so-called, individuals, and we in turn shape our environment. So as a radical feminist, I think you can't really separate the two. That body mind Cartesian division is at the root of so many health problems, including mental health problems. And so I don't see a way to tackle a problem like sleep that is so far reaching and impacts every aspect of our lives without delving into the whole kind of web. And, that was at the heart of really wanting to start this project, was giving myself the space of the 3 years that it took to make the book to really delve and look at all of those different aspects in depth.
That's
Because
fantastic.
otherwise, who has time, right? Who has time to look at all of it? It really just requires an enormous amount of focus.
Yeah. I mean, you've given us that gift, right? Because it does take a bit longer to read this book than it does for me to read many other graphic novels. There is a lot of information, and it's almost 300 pages. And it's not a light and breezy 300 pages. It's a book that you have to take a bit more time to be with. And I hope that that means for other people what it did for me, which is, like, as I was reading it, it was actually necessary to take breaks. It was necessary to take a rest as I was trying to work through all of that information. And sometimes that rest came because I was like, okay, brain full. I got to take a break just to have, like, gotta not be thinking at this moment because I've just taken in so much. Other times it was because I was furious at the state of the world. I got so upset reading about vegetable oils, and vegetable oils should always be in massive quotation marks because it's just such a branding strategy for something that is truly poisonous to not just us but to the environment, and then also gets like defended and supported by other strategies around how we represent health and how we represent diet, and that the origins of those things are completely embedded in and spring forth from, and it's another self-fulfilling cycle that capitalism supports us buying into capitalism even further. Like it's just this little snake eating its own tail, except it's like at the end of the day the head of the snake is massive and fat and the tail is like withered and skeletal.
Oh, yeah, it's a perfect image. These so-called vegetable oils, they're called them vegetable oils. There's no vegetables in the vegetable oils at all. Other term for it is seed oils, and that's a little bit, it's confusing because then people think, oh, what's wrong with sesame oil? It's kind of a misnomer too, but it's a little bit more accurate. The first seed oil was derived from cottonseed. And the reason we had mountains of rotting cotton seeds was because of the cotton industry, which depended heavily on slavery, on the enslavement of people, and on the genocide of native people to clear land to grow the crops. So the seed oil industry has its roots directly in colonialism and the enslavement of people and the Holocaust and displacement of Native people. And it was really interesting when I found that link, infuriating. And yeah, we needed to do something. People needed to do something with all of this industrial waste that was cluttering up the landscape. So they first turned it into feed for cattle, and it's still used in animal feed. It's not good for the animals. It's part of the reason we have all this methane gas. People are always saying, the farting cows, well, don't feed them stuff that they're not designed to digest. And we're not designed to digest the stuff either. So that was definitely a big deal when I learned about this. And, it's odd because it's kind of become a MAHA issue, Make America Healthy Again issue.
Oh,
But
okay.
Of course it's not that's not the way I lean at all. And it shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should just be it is just a health issue that's been co-opted as a political issue among many others. But it is real, and it is really devastating to our health and messes with our ability to metabolize fats in a healthy way. And I did some real deep dives into the science to understand how this works on a cellular level. And I don't go into that kind of detail in the book, but there are other fine authors who I can point to who talk about that very intelligently and who have the chemistry background and medical background to explain it much better than I could.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. I think perhaps I'll ask you for those names, the names of those books or the authors, and put them in the show notes for people, because if I were listening to this show, that's what I would want. I'd be like, give me all the book recommendations.
For sure. And there also have endnotes at the back of the book too, with a lot of the resources so that readers can look those things up and learn more.
Yeah. I was thinking about telling someone in my life that they might like to read this, and immediately I was like, well, how would I describe the book? I think I'd want to start by talking about the contents and mention that it's done in this graphic novel format, in this comics format. But the first thought I had was, well, it's like a pop science book. And then I was like, wait, but is that derogatory? No, because science communication is so important, and having a humanized communication of science. Right. This is a really important link for people to be able to understand something that does have a ton of science going into it, but that it doesn't block them out by making it inaccessible. So you've done what I would call a really thorough pop science book. And it does follow pop science that I've read before, in the sense that the author often brings themselves into it and brings their own experience into it. And in your case, it is lived experience of lifelong insomnia that brought you to want to write a book about the journey of understanding how your sleep could work better. What do we actually know about all of this?
Thank you for saying all those wonderful things. I have a background in cultural studies. I have a PhD in cultural studies. And so what I'm always really intrigued by is history of medicine, history of science, and how it has helped shape culture. So that's where that's where I was coming from, and how I like to weave these things together. That's a sparky place for me. Especially my generation and older generations were often steeped in this ideology that, our doctors know best, and to just kind of let the experts take care of us and take care of our health. And so learning about where the science and the nutrition science, et cetera, originated really helps kind of take away this curtain that the wizard sits behind, and then you can, like Wizard of Oz, then there's this dude operating the machinery, and you're like, oh.
Yes. There really
Yeah.
is. I mean, this is another situation because you brought up the way that the political ideologies, even where they're disagreeing on so many things, like maybe, we're finding some similarities in the realm of this health stuff. I feel that that's another point for me of agreeing with the broad idea that many people have of there being like a deep state, where I'm like, yeah, it's corporations. It's not that hard. Like it's not like a mysterious like religious thing.
No.
It's literally just our corporations are running our politics.
Yeah.
How is that controversial? How is that considered a
Right?
conspiracy? It's just fact. Like
Yeah.
it's proven over and over again, and you've also given a very good example of it here as we're talking about these vegetable oils.
Yeah. Follow the money.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, it's not like you're imagining people's intent, really. You're just actually describing, well, here's what happened. Here's what they did. Here's what they said. Here's what they currently acknowledge as fact. Here's where the science differs. It's not so far-fetched to say, this democracy is a performance of democracy.
Yeah.
It's got a lot more going on behind the curtain, such as the Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz had the little man.
Yeah.
Not to sound like cynical about it, but God, I can be real cynical
Yeah.
sometimes. Maybe that's
Yeah,
fair.
I know. Yeah. There's a lot of reason to be cynical these days. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to comment on that cultural studies background that you have. That makes a lot of sense from how I read this book, because you're bringing in just the lightest touch of other historical and present day examples from different cultures of health, how they make sense of the body, how they make sense of sleep, how they make sense of our place in the world. Like that all
Yeah.
screams cultural studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful thing to bring in, just for people to have like even a passing familiarity that the Western model of the day, for example, the Western model
Yeah.
of how many meals you're supposed to eat, the Western model of
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals being the answer to everything, is not the whole picture. Let's just make sure we're acknowledging that this is just one way. So I really appreciated that throughout the book as well, that it was at least like globally interested, even though of course you're always going to speak from your own perspective, and that position
Yeah.
is not one to erase in the telling of a story.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely grew up in the West and continue to live in the West. So it's the system that I'm within that I'm also wanting to change. And I've always believed in that old feminist adage, the personal is political. That's something I try to live by. And I don't think I've ever been as aware of how much my own actions and my own individual health affect the rest of the planet as I have been when I started really looking at my beliefs that were hindering my sleep. That was really eye-opening to understand that, yeah, I'm complicit in this, and I can feel the effects on my own body, and there are ways that I can resist, and there are ways that I can change how I do things as a kind of micro activism, like a little micro activism where I create my own climate that can, be the healthy cell kind of idea. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, I've really taken these beliefs on, and they've been really devastating to my body. And I think for a lot of us, women especially, we start to really see it when we hit perimenopause, because by then if we've been following the program and doing all the things that we think we need to do, work like crazy, raise all the kids, take care of everybody, neglect ourselves, etc. We hit that time period and our bodies are just like, nah, like you've that's enough, and and then
Yeah.
our doctor will say, oh well, you're perimenopausal here, take some medication, take some hormones. They very rarely, unless you go to like a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor or somebody like that. Very rarely are you told by a medical doctor that what you really need to do is slow down and learn how to sleep better and learn how to eat better. And the things that get labeled menopausal symptoms really have a lot more to do with how we've been mistreating our bodies and not nourishing ourselves the way that our bodies and minds need us to for the previous decades. So yeah, I've become really passionate about this, and especially want to say to younger women, this is the time to start. This is like if you're 20 or 25 or 30, it's not too early. Or for that matter, if you're in adolescence, that's when you want to start doing things differently, eating differently, being mindful of your need for rest and self-care, because if you wait until you're 40 something, it's much harder, and you risk already being burnt out and having some significant health issues crop up. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I think that that was a very good moment of the book, this exact description of how perimenopause really reared its ugly head in your life. And everyone was just like, yep, that's what happens to women. And then
Yeah, it's just
start,
normal.
exactly. And I mean, in our world, I would say normal to me is like a yellow light. Like, hang on. If
Yeah,
people are all saying that this is normal, I need to look at it. Because
yeah,
if the people who are saying it's normal have not done their own investigation and like deep reflection, probably a lot of hard work as well, surrounding the things we've been taught about our bodies, each other, the environment, our work in the world, our purpose, our meaning in the world, like if they haven't really dug into that and identified, okay, maybe there are certain aspects of the way we live now that I actually believe in. And I feel that they are my values. I choose them. I'm living them on purpose. And then there are these other ones that I really don't believe in. And now when I speak, I need to do it from a place of my truth rather than following, like you mentioned earlier, the program. Basically, the program in this case, because I think everyone will have different levels of familiarity with that. I mean, I would literally say if you're curious about what might be the program in your life, then literally just start looking at what are the things I do that are considered normal, and then start asking why and who says so,
yeah,
and does this work for me? Because if it
right.
doesn't work for you, but it's normal, that's a moment where you need to split from the program, you know?
Yeah, totally. I'm passionate, like I said, because I want younger women to get the information before they have to suffer. And also because I really feel like postmenopausal women are meant to be leaders, and we're meant to use our energy for lots of wonderful things and not be written off and sidelined because we don't feel good and we don't have the energy anymore to participate, let alone lead our species. But we're supposed to be doing that. So the other reason I'm super passionate is that, I'm middle aged and I want to be having this great energy for the next few decades so I can do my best work, because I feel like that's my birthright, and I feel like that's the birthright of every woman, of everyone, of everyone, period, whether they're cisgendered female or not. I want everyone to be able to have this incredible energy post midlife. But, historically, women embodied as women are really sidelined, really not taken seriously, and written off by the medical industry. So that's something where I've been particularly invested in seeing some change.
Okay, so I think this came to me through social media, where I was scrolling and found somebody on there talking about the unbelievable power that is the ability to give life, the ability to bear a child, and how the people who have that power are the ones who have historically most prominently been suppressed, maligned, ignored at the best of times, but absolutely persecuted and manipulated and abused and controlled at the worst. And that has to do with almost like a jealousy for that power, or the inferiority that might be experienced by people who know they can never have that power. And especially as groups. I mean, this is so pervasive in our society that women must be dismissed and suppressed and not taken seriously. Like, we talk about health concerns that women have. Doctors are so often being, oh yeah, sure, just take this pill. These horrifying experiences you're having are actually just normal because, women are busted. Like, women be crazy. So
especially older women.
Of course.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
like,
Once you're into that perimenopause thing, you're the old category now. You're no longer a young woman, because anything close to menopause means society has no use for you anymore. But all of that really resonates with me, or kind of strikes me as a similar relationship to the one we have with sleep. Throughout my life, particularly in the last, I'd say, like 10 years, I have discovered what a power sleep has over my experience, to the degree that, like, my joke when I believed in the construct of mental illness more fully, as I would say, if I don't sleep enough, I get mentally ill really fast. One day I'm doing great, I have a terrible sleep that night. The next day I don't recognize myself. And all of the things that have been identified by me and by other people as destructive in my life are dialed up. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like I'm wrangling this other person back in to just not hurt me and not hurt other people. And it's just because I slept 2 hours less than I normally would.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And in our culture today, which is this, colonial, racist, capitalist, sexist, ableist shit show, sleep is so unimportant. Like, we don't talk about it with reverence. We don't talk about it as a source of anything. It's almost another achievement, really, in our very hierarchical, controlling view of things.
Yeah.
I love how in your book there are these moments where you're like, here's another way to think about it. Some new terms I learned from your book that I really enjoyed. One of them is the night mind.
Yeah, I loved that concept so much. I think his name is Ruben Naiman, who talks about it. Yeah, that was really life-changing for me when I read about it. I felt like, oh yeah, it's not just lack of daytime. It's not just lack of wakefulness. Sleep is its own landscape. It's its own mindset. It's a whole other animal. And what does that look like? And how do I really make space for it? It's not just being unconscious, right? I think we often mistake unconsciousness for sleep, or sleep for unconsciousness, but yeah, it's so much more than that. It goes so much deeper. It's so rich and colorful and deeply healing and generative, and it allows us to learn better, and it allows us to connect with one another socially better. They've even done studies that show that people are less compassionate when they haven't slept enough.
I think that's, obvious. Like, of course.
And again, the connection with culture. Yeah, why do we have this culture that lacks empathy?
Yeah. And the disregard, once again, to relate it to that idea of like whatever is most powerful in life. There is this colonial mindset that we must control it, that we must own that power and take that power by I would say trying and failing to control the thing that is so obviously more powerful than us. And the way that especially cities are flourishing, and how much a city is almost like its own body being created by humans, like built up from scratch, in the sense that it has to have passageways, movement, it has to have, like, sewers, we're bringing water in, we're flushing water out, it must be filtrated. Like all of these things are direct correlations to the body and also to the
Yeah.
planet.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not doing that in harmony with the land that is being dominated by the presence of these things. We're truly doing it like we invented these systems and we're going to put them where we want, but you're always approximating the systems of biology that were there before you, and you're not
Yeah.
actually respecting the biology enough to learn from it and try to be in
Right.
harmony with it.
I love that metaphor as like a body that we've created sort of disrespectfully because it just is this kind of Frankenstein that emits a ton of light pollution and noise pollution, things that are really devastating to other species and to our species in the end. But also you can look at agriculture and how we've wanted to manipulate crops for greater capital gain without paying attention to things like erosion and sustainability. And it's, there's so many myths around that, like the US is feeding the world kind of myth, which I talk about in the
Yeah.
book, that are we? I mean, it's debatable because what are we really sending out into the world? Certainly calories, but as we know, people can have lots and lots of calories but still be starving. So what are we really perpetrating here? And more importantly, how could we do it differently? And what are some other models we could be looking at that are more in tune with a social body and a global eco body that is sane, that is kind of self-regenerating and healthier, and how can we realign those practices with some better patterns like that? So we don't have to look far. I think it's more about humility than having a super intellectual approach to it, but just the humility to look and look outside of our culture and outside of our species to see what other models there are. We've got to ask better questions.
Yeah, yeah, which is also an an art and a form of practice in itself, learning how to change the question, maybe how to iterate the question, maybe how to ask 100 questions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. More questions, less answers.
Yeah, well, because there's just, the different answers for everybody, depending on their needs or what position they ask the question from and what's available at the time. Like, yeah, there's never going to be enough questions.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy in these interviews asking people, like, how do you take care of your body? And then, of course, I just read your book, and this is your journey of how do I take care of my body so that sleep is something that I welcome and that, like, comes easily. And I get not just unconsciousness, but true restorative rest. I am so yearning for that right now. I was telling you before we got on the call, like, it's sort of a good, interesting coincidence that on this day after I've read your book about sleep that I'm so tired. So I'm sitting here with that feeling of like, yep, I was
Oh.
unconscious for a number of hours, but I am starving for rest. It is one of those big mysteries in my life, but I enjoyed, that may not be the right word. It's somewhat relieving, I guess, to see that in your story, you do keep mentioning it's people with childhood trauma or, any trauma whatsoever are pretty much going to have difficult sleep experiences throughout their life. I don't think I could overstate how much the effect of trauma, the millions of different iterations and manifestations of trauma in our lives is responsible. The things we struggle with and that seem to not line up or make sense, the whole picture needs to be considered, and the way that our nervous systems, the way that our memories live on the long time scale.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And what I know is that if I'm not sleeping well, my symptoms are all getting worse, and breathwork is
Yeah.
becoming more and more
Yeah.
fascinating and appealing. Like, I honestly find my body and brain like craving meditation now because it's just, oh, I need that rest so bad.
Yeah.
Or really, I know now after many years of practicing that breathing is really one of the only things I can rely on. If I'm having
Right.
struggles with everything else, this is one thing that I can play through breathing, and I know something is going to come from that that I find meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love breath work. Yeah. Yeah.
That's another one where breath is so astonishingly powerful
Yes,
that
it
the
is.
colonial capitalist culture and, racist ableist culture that we've all been living in has paid no attention to it, has made
No.
it so utterly unimportant. And it's come to this place, of course, where now we're trying to acknowledge breath matters only because science has validated all of the things that, our indigenous cultures have been knowing forever.
It's even in like the common parlance that we say when somebody's upset, we say, take a deep breath. And that's actually not the right advice at all because it's in the exhale that you activate the parasympathetic nervous system and you kind of put yourself into rest and digest mode. So it's not the breathing in, it's the breathing out. And that's what we typically kind of forget to do. Especially, those of us who work at desks.
Oh,
I
yeah.
found this really interesting concept that I mentioned in the book about email apnea,
Yes,
where
yeah.
people will inhale and then we'll sit there holding our breath. So the better thing to do when you're upset or you're experiencing anxiety is to, yes, breathe in deeply, but then take an even longer time to exhale. And that's where you're going to find your reset happening. So it's there's just so little. I mean, every culture we had rituals and we had songs and we had, we'd play instruments and we'd do things that made us pay attention to our breathing. Even when we used to. Our grandparents used to memorize poems and recite them. Like we
Yeah.
do things that required kind of being mindful of breath, and we have so little of that left.
Yeah, I mean, it immediately makes me think of storytelling. That if you want to tell a story,
Yeah.
which is a huge part of so many, if not all, cultures, that when you're telling the story, it's not just the words you're saying, but it's the pacing and it's how you're holding yourself. Are you leaning forward? Are you relaxing back? And all of these things would give you a time in the day when you're telling the story where you're really paying attention to that. And if people are paying
Yeah.
attention to you, there are also these bonds and memories and mirror neurons that are, teaching their bodies a way to be present with that breathing while you're telling the story, while they're absorbed and listening and feeling open and inspired. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a real adamant disregard for that as a way of being in our cultures today, or in our culture today, because I'm just gonna speak to the dominant monoculture, I should say, because there are so many cultures here. It's just that,
Yeah.
there's this one big one,
Yeah.
but it's really it really is when it's spoken about now in a health context, and it tends to be still individually focused. And that one is an element of, I guess, the normal, the program of normal in this culture, that like if you are having problems with sleep, you do these breathing things, and it's your business, it's your privacy, it's you in your own home. You're not going to bother anybody else with this stuff. In fact, you're taking care of your sleep only so much that you become a person who can not be a bother to others in the world and just, be
Right.
productive and execute your tasks and be pleasant with people. And
Yeah,
ugh,
which
yeah,
is
just
how we deal with mental health issues, so-called mental health issues too, and
yeah.
psychology, right? Like just like get it under control so that you can be, so that you can fit into society and do your part, etc. It's not about like, is this person really feeling their optimal best? Do they have good energy? Are they content in their lives? Those aren't the questions. It's more like, how can you function well and anyway, I have, had a major shift in how I think about mental health over the past decade or so. And I think, fortunately, there's a lot more conversation now about mental health and brain health, that mental health isn't something that's separate from the brain and the rest of the
Yeah.
body, but
Yeah.
it's like
Come
you're,
on, of
you know,
course.
if you wake up and eat Fruit Loops, you're not gonna, like, your brain is not gonna be happy a couple hours later. You're not gonna have like this amazing morning full of productivity and insight and a general sense of well-being. Like there's a direct, correlation. So I've noticed my anxiety, because I have PTSD and chronic anxiety I was diagnosed with. I have noticed my anxiety level typically, unless I'm in the middle of a very stressful situation, which is like normal, right?
Yeah.
That's to be expected. But in the day to day, my anxiety levels are so much less of an issue to even not being an issue anymore, without antidepressants or anything, just by having changed my diet and not hyping myself up on simple carbs and sugars all the time, which is we're like a society full of hummingbirds, we're kind of like
Yeah, buzzing around.
it's not species appropriate though. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of a cute image, but I think it causes a lot of mental anguish, actually, to be constantly hyped up and looking for the next fix to take us higher, rather than allowing us to settle into something that's more grounded and less hyper. So that was, I don't know, that was a major shift in my thinking.
Yes, yeah. And it is like what we're talking about is a lot. I also want to acknowledge for people listening, like, Maureen's been doing this for how many decades? I've been doing this for how many decades? It can be such a slow learning process and filled with a lot of pressure, which also doesn't help anybody. There really isn't some kind of external correct way to do anything, but you have to find
No.
the strength and the support and the money often to try all of these different things with enough time to kind of learn from it
Yes.
and integrate it, and then find the thing that really fits you.
Yes.
And I just want more people to have those opportunities, and for it to not be
Yeah.
so hard and not be so barriered. So I
Me
feel like your
too.
book is, yeah, well, your book is contributing to that, because, spending 30 or $40 on a book is vastly less expensive than $3,000 on a special mouth guard, like you were talking about in the book.
Yeah, for sure. My smoking credit card. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't coming from a place of enormous wealth either, as I was
No, me
researching this
neither.
book. And
Yeah.
but it's totally free to tune into your body and notice how different things make you feel. It's more about what we don't consume, actually, than what we do consume. So yeah, it's really expensive to shop at like Whole Paycheck or the Wealth Food Store, but it's totally free to eliminate alcohol, because alcohol will wake you up in the middle of the night and totally mess with your sleep. Like I still enjoy a beer once in a while, and I love it, but I always notice how it affects my sleep. So it's free to do that. It's free to just take a minute and notice, and maybe take things out that aren't making you feel great, and then, yeah, add in the things that do. And so it's not so much that you have to invest a ton of money, but more invest in attention, paying compassionate attention to yourself.
Yeah, and doing that with a guide, if not like a community, because often our communities are not on the
Yeah,
same journey that we're on. And it
I
certainly
know.
can be hard to find a space if you're looking for something new, to like find people who you may not have met before but who are interested in these topics. Like, those are generally something you have to pay a fee to participate in. A lot of the times, if there's more information involved, like learning about these details you share in the book, I mean, especially if you're looking for someone to sort of go with you on this journey, which I think is ideal, is to do it in a relationship, in your
Yeah.
friendships, or with a teacher. Like those
Yeah.
are really beautiful. They're just not available to everybody. So at least there's this book
Right.
that can also be a guide, a companion, something to turn to when you're struggling with something like, oh, I'm going to go and, read this section again because it didn't just give me information. It also gives me the art that I can absorb and sort of bathe in for any length of time if I need it over and over. That's why I love comics, because you can really like flip open a
Yeah.
page and you're just there. You don't have
Yeah.
to even read a whole sentence to be there. You're just taking in the page and experiencing that
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. Totally. I love that about graphic novels too. Yeah, little world.
Speaking of graphic novels more broadly, and this idea of books as companions and sources of information, I said this is pop science earlier. It's also graphic medicine, which is what this podcast is about. And you teach this graphic medicine course every year. I think it's January through the end of March. Is that roughly the timeline? It's 3 months
Yeah,
long.
it's three
So,
months. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
called the Graphic Medicine Deep Dive. And you were
Yeah.
describing it a bit to me the other day as like, there's a lot of reading. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea of introducing people to all of the little worlds, all of those little companions
Yeah.
and those little help
Yeah.
guides. Could you tell me more about like why you approach it that way, and also just what you love about teaching graphic medicine? You do it every year.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. I love the community for one thing. And I absolutely am a bibliophile and love the books. And, I feel like as artists, as creators, we learn so much from one another. And those books represent that community of other creatives who have different skill sets, different life experiences, different concerns with their health, and they're all coming together in this beautiful way. So, being able to share those with one another in community is such a joy. And it gives participants the kind of excuse, if they need it, to indulge in a new graphic novel every week during the course. And it gives us the room for discussion to really delve in and see what are they doing philosophically, what are they doing creatively, what are they doing with materials, what are some of the different approaches and techniques that they use. And that's such a beautiful way and painless way to learn and kind of enhance our own practices. So that's a big part of it. And then I also love giving prompts and just kind of seeing what people come up with. And this saw community is so amazing because there's so many amazing artists in it. I never feel like I'm like teaching a room full of students. I feel more like I'm in a group of peers and we're all learning from one another. So it's really great that way. I really love it. Yeah, it's such a privilege.
Yes, yeah. I tend to think of teaching in that format anyway, that like even if I'm the one who's holding the container for the class, there is this
Yeah.
mutual transmission, and we're in this shared space that is actually defined and I guess expands from all the people who are here. And if it were different people, it'd be a different space.
Yeah, and you and I are both so passionate about graphic medicine, and yet we have such different approaches. And I think that's, a really great case in point of how we can have such a full experience by putting our minds together. You always get exponentially more by collaborating and kind of contributing and bringing all the different pieces together, different pieces of our lives and experience together. So, yeah, because you're
Yeah.
also teaching
Yeah.
a graphic medicine course, and I think it's a very different approach from my own. So I think they really complement one another really beautifully.
Yeah, it never is for me that like one approach is better than any other. It's just making sure that there are these different approaches so that people can find not only what works for them in general, but maybe just what they want right now. This isn't
Right.
something you can take once and then you're done. You get your certificate and you walk away. You
Yeah.
can return because it's going to feel different on a different year for you. You might be at a different phase of life. You might have different goals within
Right.
your comics or things you want to learn in graphic
Yeah.
medicine.
Right.
Life.
And then there's new titles, and then there's
Yeah,
new titles
exactly. Of
every
like
year,
it just
right?
actually never ends.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful, and it's also, it can be hard to choose to rest when you're so excited about pursuing maybe the
Yeah.
project you're working on or the new book that's just come out. That's
right.
one of the things that I do find hard to turn off. Enthusiasm can also be the reason that I'm up at night.
Totally. Yeah, I know that one too. Yeah. What do you do then? Do you get up in the middle of the night and journal, or how do you
It
deal
can,
with it?
yeah,
When you're...
it can happen
Yeah.
like that for sure. If I'm stuck on something, sometimes what I'm doing is lying there and I'm deliberately thinking, because this is time to let your mind do like whatever wandering it wants to.
Right.
No
Yeah.
goals, going nowhere. But sometimes there's a topic or a memory, like something that comes up and makes my heart race, and I have thoughts about it that feel
Yeah.
urgent. And actually, as far as tuning into the body, I would say if that's all you do is just that you notice when your heart starts racing, that is a really strong indicator and a strong way in to receiving information from your body. But often, if we're used to dismissing it, it will just turn into more thoughts, and then you look at those rather than looking at the sensory information and going, hey, what caused my heart to speed up just now?
Yeah.
Um, So if my heart is racing, then I'm like, okay, I need to dispel that energy. And if it's expressing myself, it can be through writing. It can be, I need to get up and actually do like maybe a 10 or 15 minute breathing or yoga practice, because that heart racing is more related to things that are actually like unsolvable in life.
Yeah.
And there isn't
Yes.
going to be an action I can take. It's more about teaching my body that I'm still safe, even though that unsolvable thing is present.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that one too. Very
Yeah.
familiar. Yeah, it's well said. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you can't really solve much in the middle of the night, and everything is much louder in your mind than it is during the day, because it is such a quiet time, right? It's quiet. So everything is amplified. And just kind of knowing that, I think, helps. Like, this tomorrow won't seem insurmountable. Just feels that way
Yes.
at 2 a.m. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's another, it's a strong element of our cultural failing since we bought into capitalism and colonialism so hard, is the insistence upon forgetting what came before now, forgetting the context that we're living in, forgetting the bad things that happened yesterday that we need to repair. I say yesterday, but we're talking, a decade ago, 100 years ago. There's active repair to be done there, but only if we remember. At night, in order to let go and go to sleep, we need to actually honor what is still here that needs to be dealt with, that needs to be listened to, that needs to be expressed, so that I can go to sleep because I have dealt with it, or I have processed it a little bit. Because if it's calling for my attention, there's a reason for that. If I'm trying to go to sleep as a way to forget everything I just did in the day, it's just burying it deeper and stopping me from relaxing.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you, as a way to put a pin in this conversation, which you and I could carry on for days, and probably will at some point. I think what I'd like to do is ask you, is there something you could offer to people right now? Something you could offer them that feels supportive of your health that you'd want to pass on?
Yeah, well, because you were just talking about that kind of nighttime anxiety and the anxious mind that doesn't let go of things before you go to sleep, I could offer a little practice that might be helpful with that.
Oh yes,
So,
if you want to help me, I'm all for it.
yeah. Well, as cartoonists, as graphic novelists, people who make comics, this is kind of really perfect for our work too, where if you keep a visual journal, great. You already know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, or if you typically draw on a tablet, it's really worth getting an analog, old-fashioned notebook. It doesn't have to be fancy, something that you enjoy writing in and drawing in. And that's a perfect place to explore what's going on, what's causing the anxiety, maybe looking a little more deeply at where that's coming from. And for me, I like to start every day with it because I have a very early circadian rhythm. So I wake up around 4 and I fall asleep around 8:30 or 9. You can also do this before bed. So it's one of the tips that Matt Walker talks about, the sleep doctor, sleep diplomat. He talks about journaling before bed. Write down everything that's on your mind and that you need to take care of. Just put it on paper and leave it there. And you'll know that it's there and you can find it there tomorrow. And that way you're not just carrying that with you into sleep. But in terms of, creative practice, it's also a beautiful thing to have a book like where you can put your excitement and your generative ideas in that book, and that can be the space for it, so you're not trying to hold it in your mind in the middle of the night. Also, there's no rule about if you wake up in the middle of the night because you've just had an amazing dream or you have some kind of insight that's just really sparking you. There's no rule that you have to stay in bed or you've failed at your sleep. Like, you can absolutely get up and write that down and, make a little drawing if you're inspired to do a little drawing, and sit there and get that down in your journal. And then I often find if I do that it's much easier to go back to sleep.
Amazing. Yeah, that's something people can do tonight if they want to do tomorrow. So that's lovely. Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Again, feel like, we'll talk again. We might even have you back and go deep into another topic, perhaps one of the many things we just barely touched on today. Yeah. We'll have to pick up that thread another time. This has been lovely, and we've mentioned it already that you have this graphic medicine deep dive, which I believe is actually starting imminently. By the time this podcast comes out, it's going to be within the week that your course gets going. So if people are totally inspired by this, they might be able to go and grab a spot. But is there anything else that we should make sure they know about?
Gosh, no. I mean, pick up Queen of Snails, my graphic memoir. I think you'll really enjoy it. And definitely Sleepless Planet, especially if you struggle with sleep issues.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah, I'd love to see you in class, get to know you that way through your work. Mm-hmm. So it's been such an enormous pleasure talking with you, Georgia. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too, Maureen.
Yeah, for having me here.
So I hope you enjoyed my chat with Maureen. I came away from it with a lot to think about and a lot of really good advice and tips and things that actually mostly flow from her book. So I'm going to recommend again that you check out Sleepless Planet. It is beautiful, it is heartbreaking, and it is very practical, very helpful. I really hope you check it out. I also hope you sign up for her course. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a review. I would love to know what you thought. I would also really love your ideas, who you'd like me to talk to on the next podcast. I am looking for new artists because this podcast is partly about me talking to my friends, but it's also partly about me getting to know artists I wasn't aware of. So thank you. Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for your reviews. Please tell your friends about the show and tell us what you want to hear. Until next time.
Hi, I'm Maureen Burdock. I'm a graphic novelist and a comics coach. Graphic Medicine Deep Dive is starting in January. Enjoy community, supportive feedback, generative prompts, and some great titles. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you.
If If you loved listening to this episode, or if it stirred something new in you, I'd love you to leave us a review. Sharing your experiences is a gift to yourself and others, and definitely me. I love learning how my offerings land in other people, and it really helps the show to find those who need it. If you want to connect with myself and others who are practicing drawing health in community every Saturday, just go to drawinghealth.com and sign up for the weekly live class. It's truly some kind of magic, and it wouldn't be possible without our hosts, SAW. The Sequential Artist Workshop is a grassroots, nonprofit comic school and creative community. At SAW, we teach people how to tell stories and make comics in Gainesville, Florida, USA, and around the world via our online courses and resources. Go to sequentialartistworkshop.org to join our community of learners and artists today. Our theme music is Magic Hours by Aaron Como, made for the Main Street Music Library. The Main Street Music Library hosts instrumental music created with simple parameters, with scores and instructions for listeners to recreate the music themselves. Musicians, artists, and listeners are encouraged to borrow freely from the library and return the materials in a different form than they found them. Find out more at mainstreetmusiclibrary.com. This podcast is for information and exploration purposes only and is never intended as medical advice. Every viewer and listener is encouraged to seek medical attention at their own discretion. This podcast and the guided practices are tools for listeners to support their whole health and should always be used with care.